You're listening to the Quint's podcast.
To boost or not to boost? The debate on COVID-19 booster shots has existed ever since inoculations have begun, with the scientific community racing to figure out how long the protection from vaccines will last. However, the debate was supercharged recently with the emergence of the highly mutated Omicron variant, which according to UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson is causing a tidal wave of infections across the British Isle. The concerns regarding the new variant were muted initially, with early reports indicating that it only causes mild symptoms. However, with the report of the first death due to Omicron in the UK and its rapid increase across the country, representing over 44% of total cases in London, the need of booster doses has become increasingly clear. Omicron has also announced its presence in India as well, with the national tally climbing to 49 on 14 December. However, India is yet to take a decision on booster doses. But there are very critical questions on booster doses which are yet not answered. The first, how effective are the current available vaccines towards Omicron? Second, what are the reservations regarding booster doses? And finally, if India does authorize booster doses, which vaccine is our best shot? To help answer these questions, we spoke to Dr. Rakesh Mishra, former director of the Center for Cellular and Molecular Biology. You'll also hear from Dr. Shahid Jamil, one of India's top virologists, who we spoke to earlier in December on the same topic. You're tuned in to The Big Story, the podcast where we dissect the headline-making news for you, and I'm your host, Himmat. Let's first start with what we know so far about how infectious Omicron is compared to variants like Delta. Since it was first detected on 26 November in South Africa, Omicron has spread to over 60 countries, despite travel bans and restrictions. It's currently most prevalent in the UK, where more than 3,000 cases of Omicron have been detected in less than 3 weeks. And the situation may become worse, according to the UK Health Secretary Saeed Javid, who told Reuters on 14 December that Omicron infections are estimated to a worrying 200,000 per day. What is even more concerning, though, is that the Omicron variant reduces vaccine efficacy, according to a WHO statement, which essentially means that even if you're double vaccinated, there is a high probability that you may get infected with Omicron if you come in contact with it. And even the best vaccines like Pfizer have shown just 33% protection against infection from Omicron, according to a South African study, compared to 95% to the original variant. So, if Omicron reduces or evades immune response, does this mean that you don't have immunity from it? We took this question to Dr. Rakesh Mishra, the former director of the Center for Cellular and Molecular Biology. According to him, even though Omicron does reduce or neutralize antibodies, there are immune responses like T cells and memory B cells, which attach to the compromised immune cells and can attack the virus directly.
In this case, Omicron, as its mutants indicate, but we don't have to go by all the mutants and sum up and everything and start panicking. Mutants individually and in combination may not behave in a similar expected manner. So therefore, while this looks that it might break the vaccine protection to some degree, but there is really no indication that vaccines will be ineffective completely. Now, there are studies happening in many places, preliminary results to show that some vaccines at least antibody neutralization assay shows that the protection has decreased. But the vaccines have multiple means of protecting, and one is cell immunity, which we are not measuring yet. That will take a little longer time to figure out to what degree that is compromised on this one. But it's most likely that will be less compromised. And even current vaccines, if people are vaccinated properly, that is 2 doses or whatever the dose recommended for the vaccine, we will have advantage. We may get infections, but the severities or symptoms will be much, much milder. Omicron, although is very infectious as it appears, but all the indications are that symptoms are otherwise also mild. So, and then on top of that, vaccination and natural protection, because we have very huge seropositivity. I consider that one of our biggest strengths today, that we have lots of people who are seropositive. So that means we have already got natural vaccination done for a large number. Omicron will not be creating much of a problem for us.
So now that we know that existing vaccines, even the best ones, may not provide adequate protection from Omicron, how do we fix this? Enter booster shots. With Omicron, the broad consensus regarding booster shots is largely positive, with early data and reports suggesting that those who take a third vaccine dose have increased immunity towards it. And this consensus spread like wildfire after Omicron was detected, especially in the US, which has hundreds of millions of excess vaccine doses and has authorized booster doses for anyone above the age of 16. And the lead contender for boosters are mRNA vaccines like Pfizer and Moderna. Now, early real-world data from the UK and Israel show that a booster dose of an mRNA-based vaccine sharply lowers a person's likelihood of catching COVID-19. Now, for countries which have large stocks of mRNA vaccines for their population, a booster shot is logistically feasible. However, for a country like India, where not even a single Pfizer shot has entered, it's a distant dream given the back orders Pfizer has. And according to Dr. Shahid Jamil, one of India's top virologists, the task of booster doses is more worrisome for India, since administering a third dose of Covishield, which has been administered in over 90% of the population, won't offer great protection as well.
Almost 90% of doses given in India are Covishield. But Covishield is not a vaccine which you can use as a booster. If I have had 2 doses of Covishield and I get a third dose of Covishield as a booster, it's not going to do very much to enhance my COVID immunity. And that's simply the way the vaccine is, the way the platform is. So for that, we will have to deploy other vaccines.
At present, the Union Health Ministry has said that the current focus is to fully vaccinate as many eligible adults as possible. However, the Health Ministry has said that it is exploring and investigating options for booster doses. So, what are India's options? There are at present 4 approved vaccines in India: Covishield, Covaxin, Sputnik V, and Zydus Cadila. Now, the preliminary consensus in the National Technical Advisory Group on Immunization, which provides vaccine guidance to the center, is that a booster needs to be a vaccine from a different platform, which essentially means that if you got Covishield, you can't get it as a booster. However, according to an Indian Express report, this also does not mean that you can get a Covaxin booster dose after being double vaccinated with Covishield or vice versa. The same goes for Sputnik V as well. And if you're concerned about the mix and match of these vaccines, we dedicated an entire episode on this earlier this year. You'll find a link to that episode in our show notes. So that leaves us with Zydus Cadila, a DNA-based vaccine which can be tweaked in accordance to the variant. If you want to learn more about how this vaccine actually works, we did an entire episode on this as well, on how it works, what kind of protection it provides. You'll find a link to that episode in our show notes as well. The other hopeful option that India has is Genova, which is a homegrown mRNA vaccine which will finish its phase 2 trials by January. And according to an Economic Times report, the company is looking at the possibility of conducting separate trials to test its vaccine as a booster dose. However, according to Dr. Jamil, India's best bet at this point for boosters is to import mRNA vaccines as soon as possible.
So India should look at importing RNA vaccines for healthcare workers. India also has 2 other vaccines, protein vaccines. One is the Novavax vaccine from Serum Institute, and the other is a vaccine that Biological E makes, which are both protein vaccines which have gone through trials. The numbers look good, but they haven't been approved yet. So India may consider giving emergency approval to those protein vaccines to be used as boosters in healthcare workers. So those are possibly the policy things that should be looked at.
At the Quint and the Quint Fit, we have dedicated entire sections to Omicron and vaccines. If you have more questions, head to the links in our show notes. And for more deep dives into Omicron and the latest on COVID-19, subscribe to the Big Story Podcast on Spotify, Apple, Google Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts. If you liked listening to this episode, please subscribe to The Big Story for episodic updates. We're available on Apple, Google Podcasts, Spotify, JioSaavn, and most of the other popular podcast streaming platforms. For other podcasts, please log on to the Quint website, and for any feedback, please shoot an email to podcast@thequint.com.
Thanks for listening. Log on to the Quint website and check out our other podcasts.